Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights here with Rich Klein. I've done 2 other episodes with other individuals about card shows in the 70s, especially just card shows in the 70s and then card shows in the 80s, and people like that. People say, what about the 90s? And I thought, well, I'll do the 90s with Rich, and we'll talk about the card shows of the 90s with probably a special emphasis on the Nationals, because those were the main shows, and that was it started up and probably finished down. So that was an interesting decade, and we'll talk about that. But thanks, sponsors, Topps, Panini, and Upper Deck, Heritage Auctions, Huggins Scott Auctions, Mike's Stadium Sports Cards, Burbank Sports Cards, as well as ComC.com and Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication. Certainly Beckett was there. I don't remember Heritage making a lot of noise in the 90s.
No.
Panini was busy making stickers. Upper Deck.
But Donruss, their predecessor, was very active.
Donruss was extremely active. Okay. And Topps obviously was. Mike's Stadium Sports Cards had a shop, but he hadn't been to the National.
He didn't go to the National till 2019.
And
I don't know when Rob started going to the National.
He probably went to the Anaheim ones.
Yes.
Anyway, thanks, Rich. I went to all those. Did you go to every one
I
of them?
did go to every one.
And some of them were on our nickel.
Most were on your nickel. 90 was my last show before I came to work at or my next to last show, actually.
So you came down to Arlington for the Dallas-Fort Worth area for the National in 90.
You interviewed me the day after the show.
And that's okay.
The day after the show. And in those days, we did a little bit of everything. I was younger. I did a little bit of everything. For the next week after a National, I was absolutely worthless.
Yeah.
Well,
it was exhausting. It was huge. Even though now you look back, that was probably one of the smaller venues.
You could not run.
You couldn't run it now.
No.
And that was the first place that it had 2 Nationals. The first venue.
Yes. And what's interesting.
And it was Wanda Marcus, who was indomitable.
And someone told me, and I've never seen the clip, but apparently I am pictured on some TV clip, whether it's NBC News or I think it's NBC Nightly News. I'm pictured on their 90 National when they did something on the Nightly News covering the 90 National net.
Breaking story. Okay.
I've never seen it, so I can't verify it.
Apocryphal, but that would be cool. Nowadays, the thing about the beauty of the current age is that once it's on video, somebody can find it. Somebody may 30 years ago, maybe not so much.
Somebody may still find it, but I'd like to see it, if anybody has it, just so I can see it.
I'd love to see it too.
It's on one of the nightly. It was on a network news, and I think it's NBC.
Okay. Well, so anyway, 90 was here, and so that was, and we'd known each other before, obviously.
We met at the Apocryphal softball
84,
field. We had communicated before, but I think I formally met you in 84.
Yeah. Okay, so 90 was the first show. Well, we're saying the first show of the 90s. 91 in Anaheim was the greatest National of all time in context.
I think we should do a separate episode one day on the 91 National, which deserves 15, 20 minutes of its own.
Okay, let's skip over that, because I drove up that first day and the line was all the way around the building. When they say 100,000 people attended, I think there were more. I don't even know how you count anymore. It was a madhouse.
The 91 National, it was the last year of seminars before the show began. And I know B.A. Murray and I and maybe Grant, we went to a couple of seminars which got us in the building early, which I was very thankful for, because I didn't have to fight through any of that crowd.
It was crazy.
But then there was these 2 dealers from Arkansas, Bernie Lytle and Mark Shreve. And I swear we were all feeling so afraid for our lives. We just went to the food court or whatever was the concession stand. We got as far away on the first promo night, the corporate night, from all that as possible, and sat down and drank and had the hot dog and drank sodas until we...
Well, they were stampedes. It was talk about a herd mentality. It was a trampling herd. Okay, so 92 in Atlanta. And you know what that's famous for?
Well,
our rookie cards.
Yes, Shaquille O'Neal.
You and me.
Yes.
Forget about Shaquille O'Neal. They get the Rich Klein rookie card.
They also get the Tom Laberger and Grant Sandberg.
I know, and you know what? They're 500 of all of them, right?
Yes.
They didn't give me more than 500.
And
I got a box. You got a box, right?
Yes. Jasperson, and I since have sold it to a very nice man in San Antonio. Jasperson sent me the uncut sheet.
No way.
He did. He sent me the uncut sheet.
Oh, that's because he had Topps archives.
Yes.
Oh, that's not fair.
So he sent me the uncut sheet, and it's a very nice man who's and he's real. And his son lived here, and I remember delivering him the sheet at Willow Bend Mall, and it was as I said, he's a really classy guy, and he now has the sheet. And I'm glad, because it's in a really good hands.
Good. How many were in the set?
66.
66, yeah.
So it's an easy sheet to make.
Yeah.
But it was a brilliant idea. We're both cataloged in ComC now with that.
I made the price guide, Rich. You did too.
What's funny is I sent the card in, and I put it at $49.95 because I just wanted it out there so nobody would buy it.
I bet you got.
Tim bought it in 5 minutes.
He didn't make you. He makes offers when he does my stuff.
He didn't make an offer. He just bought it.
Oh, gee. That's affirmation, Rich. 93 was going to, it was the Chicago, but downtown at the McCormick.
But that was a good show.
And I do remember Stampedes there, too.
That was in fact, there was.
Somebody got hurt.
Yes, I think somebody got hurt every year. But 93, I remember Rosie Jones, a very sweet dealer, just starting to complain about how much it cost her to do the show each year. And she said that was going to be her last national, and it really was. But you could see the stampede every morning of people just running to the corporate. It was like the Bulls. And it still goes on to this day. They're not going for the promos necessarily, but they're all now going to they're still running to the corporates and the card companies first thing in the morning.
Do you know how she got in the hobby? Her husband turned down my offer to buy his collection on a buying trip. And he said, so you actually buy cards, and then what do you do with them? And I said, there's card shows and stuff like that. I gave too much information. And he said, I think, when's the next one? And they lived somewhere, I think in Ohio. And I said, in fact, there's a show in Columbus that's in a few months. And so rather than me buying it, and he had a bunch of stuff, and he came, and Rosie was his wife. So. And then he passed away, and I think she carried on.
Right.
Anyway, 94 is Houston.
About 2 weeks before the baseball strike.
And yes, just barely before. And the claim to fame that I remember is that was our big splash of Beckett Publications having something like 78 of our employees went to the show.
You offered to pay for
I know, but I didn't know everybody would take me up on it. But it was a chance to really experience the energy of the hobby. And I thought that'd be valuable for our employees. But it was just a quick plane trip down into the...
But that was pre-9/11.
Southwest Airlines. You jump on the plane, you probably could be back and forth the same day pretty easily for $50 or something like that. And so no overnights, but yeah, the specter of the strike was there, but and we had a booth, but again, this is pre-grading. So when people are going down there, it's not like we send, or the Beckett Media sends a bunch of people, but that's mainly for, half of them are doing grading, I think.
More than half.
More than half, yeah. Okay, 95. My recollection, I remembered the dinner, and I
was not there,
show,
so I
but I just am saying, you're saying you think the show was really great in 95 in St. Louis because the baseball strike had just resolved.
And I think everybody was so worried about how the show would be. And the show was just fine. It was actually energy. There were people buying. There were people selling. It showed that the hobby was going to survive. It was going to have ups and downs, but it showed that if you still had good stuff, you would survive. We also got that year there was some new baseball trivia game. And somehow we ended up in a contest, all the hobby media. So we ended up in a contest. And I remember asking, because I swear I had seen that game at FanFest. And I said, is this the same machine I saw at FanFest? No. I'm going to tell y'all it was the same machine. And I spent a couple hours playing that. So I knew every answer.
Well,
I was pretty good at trivia already,
yeah.
And I really knew every answer.
Not fair.
95 comes up with one of the great stories. I ran out of money at the show. So I go to the Jim Beckett Bank.
Okay.
I need a couple $100.
Okay.
Mark Harwell sees you give me $300 without batting an eye.
So 96, what I remember about 96 when I had a heart attack. I had a heart attack later after the National, but I do recall that I'd actually pulled back from day-to-day price guide activities right around when the National was. That summer is when I became more of an executive.
You were pulling back, and I was about on nervous breakdown time.
You were?
Because there was the first almanac.
Were they throwing all that on you and expecting you to?
And the thing was, it took all I had.
Yeah.
I literally worked for 3 months.
Yeah. I'm one of the few guys who would understand.
I literally worked for 3
sorry.
months, 8 to 8, Monday to Friday, 12 to 6, Saturday and Sunday, just to get out. And it wasn't the great, except it was me.
I hear you.
And by the next year, and then it took me 3 months to clean up after the almanac to get all the database ready.
Right.
The next year but I went to the National in 96, and I'm serious. I'm near a nervous breakdown at this point.
Gosh, Rich, you're killing me here. Wow.
And I go to the National. And I go through, and I'm having a great time. I go through the first room. It took me 2 days. And Nigel Spill, very funny. His daughter's in college in Louisiana. I think she's in Tulane. I'm not exactly sure, but I see his post on Facebook. His daughter's in college in New Orleans. And he goes, Rich, there's a second room the same size. Excuse me? There's a second room the same size. I said, oh, no.
Yeah.
It was wonderfully big, but that was quite a National.
Yeah.
I wish I'd spent the whole time there, but I was really at that point. You understand because you know what it was like.
Oh gosh, it's just there's the tension of wanting to do a good job, and the problem is if you were completely perfectionistic and exhaustive, the year would be up before you got done doing some of the research to make sure every card was.
Well, we had a lot of.
So we were, you've got to pick where you can spend your time to get things out on deadline.
We were also adjusting the database from Word to Access.
Exactly.
And so there were some issues with that
Probably, yeah. That's when I stepped out. I didn't know that burden was falling so heavily on you.
That book burden almost darn near killed me.
Gosh,
I went on a 4-day drinking binge at the end of the first almanac.
Rich, so in 96 could have been the demise of both of us. We could have had a double funeral. Gee, I had a heart attack and you
don't know. And then for the next couple months, I literally fixed stuff in the database. And so by 97, even though it was a hard book, most of the database issues were fixed.
Exactly. People, you can't say it's a piece of cake to edit a previous version, but it's way easier than doing something from scratch. And changing the database or the architecture, the skeleton of the data was really, and that's when I stepped out because it was time for me to, I don't know that I was fried, but I had a heart attack. So what am I going to say?
You were probably more fried than you realized.
Probably. Anyway, 97 was the first one in Cleveland. And I've always enjoyed going to Cleveland. I'm going to miss not going to Cleveland, but that's the first one I really went to as a CEO. And as a CEO that had a heart attack, and so was really eager to be delegating and allowing the outstanding team to. And
I will tell you, Cleveland was a pretty good show. The 2018 National in Cleveland was the best Cleveland National I ever gone to. Yeah. But the Ferris wheel in the middle of the floor certainly adds an element to the IX Center. And the funny thing with the IX Center in 97, the 97 National was supposed to be the last event ever at the IX Center. And they've lasted 22.
It was a munitions depot or something. So, yeah. And I misspoke. I don't know if that was you when we were talking about this, or maybe it was on the Hobby Hotline, but I was thinking the city could come in, but it turns out the city already owned it.
The city owns it.
And that's the problem, because otherwise the city would rescue it, but it was already probably losing a lot of money. Anyway, 98 was at the first one in Chicago that was near O'Hare Airport at the Stevens Center. And I love that. That's the most convenient place.
Part of me always goes to John Broggi to say we should have the National there every year.
Well,
and part of me always listens to John Broggi's response. If we keep it there,
it's not a National.
It's not a National anymore. So I'm torn. It is the ideal place for the National. It fits everything the National needs.
And it's great.
And it's a central location.
And we're both really looking forward to this summer, and I hope things are back to normal. Anyway, to end on how can we turn the Atlanta 99 National, our last one we're going to cover, into a positive? It was really the worst.
It was
National,
but you know what?
in terms of lower than expectations in attendance. Was it underpromoted? Was it just a bad?
Atlanta's not really a great hobby venue.
Yeah.
It's not a great hobby city. And no knock, there's a good hobby cluster, but it's not like a lot of the other areas. But I really got a chance to talk to a lot of the dealers in person and spend some time. So, on the relationship level, it's a good show. But in terms of how it was for customers.
So it's more sedate. It was more relaxed, which you don't expect to have at a National. Again, the 90s so it didn't end strong, but those early 90s were spectacular. And 91 especially.
And the National got better after that. It was just Atlanta is not the right place for a National at this point.
Well, hadn't been there since. So, at any rate, thanks, Rich.
Thanks
everybody. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Thanks for the walk down memory lane for the 90s shows, especially the Nationals. Again, that's the peak of the hobby year, and there were some great ones. So, thanks, everybody. Be back tomorrow.